Forge the narrative.
Hey everybody, welcome to Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul Murphy, your host for the Alabama Lost Souls podcast, and I'm joined tonight by Chris Morgan,
Book 8,
Mike Brandt, and Val Hovenfinger.
Hallo, wie geht es Ihnen heute?
Abaddon, you my only friend.
so good.
Vigilus is Ablaze. By the time you're hearing this, you will have your first opportunity to order Vigilus Ablaze.
That means on fire.
Yep, and Chaos Space Marine Codex, the second.
The second generation.
This is like Chaos Space Marines Codex 3.5, right?
Codex Chaos Space Marines, the do-over.
Yeah,
The recodexing.
Yeah, well, people were saying, oh my goodness, can't believe we're getting a new book. The book is quite a bit thicker than the original release of Chaos Space Marines. It does have all the new stuff and updates in it, up and including all the new stuff that's coming out in Vigilus. So the Discordiant, the Lord Discordiant, the guy on the Death Shrimp, like Chris said, is
Lord Discordant.
Yep,
It's called coolest model we've seen in forever.
it's a cool model. I wish it was out right now. I'd be using it as my Dark Mechanicus call.
You can be using it as your whatever you could think of to use it as.
Any conceivable. It's the Primaris Lieutenant for my Luna Wolves.
Would you have Abaddon?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I was told once by a guy in the Games Workshop studio the genesis of his name. Do you know what it is?
Oh, Abaddon?
Abaddon.
Man.
No. Abaddon is the correct pronunciation. That's how
Yeah,
Games Workshop pronounces it.
Okay, that's the way that I used to pronounce it until you find out that there's that's a name, Abaddon. But go ahead.
There is a name Abaddon, right? It's like from ancient lore or whatever, right?
Yeah, ancient mythology, yeah.
Yeah, no, he is a bad one. Abaddon. Abaddon. That is literally the story of how they came up with his name.
Good enough
He's the
for me.
stereotypical bad guy in the Games Workshop 40k universe. So think of A space bad space apostrophe UN work style. Abaddon.
Judging by Jess Goodwin's voice, I think a lot of their ideas came after smoking 10 million cigarettes and drinking 10 pints at the pub, and that sounds pretty good as well.
We could talk a little bit about his rules. I mean, getting a better model, won't start off 8 wounds, still under, he's in that nice threshold.
Death more than 8 wounds.
Death to the False Emperor, which does not get sometimes you forget you have that, but it's an amazing rule. You play Imperium all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a battle report recently where they actually wrote it on a guy's hand so that he wouldn't forget.
Well, and remember, 8 wounds and he halves all damage suffered.
Okay, yeah, that's the Dark Destiny. That's where we're going, is that he has a 4+ invulnerable save. In addition, all damage suffered by Abaddon, the spoiler, is halved, rounding up.
So he has like 12 wounds in practice.
Yeah, and with that variance in the 4+ save, I think he's going to be a beast, because sometimes you just don't fail those.
Truth.
He can teleport in. He gives you 2 additional command points just for taking him. I think that's what I think he had that before, though, right? Or was it or was it 1 before?
I think it was 2.
Yeah,
if I remember right. My first opponent at the Adepticon 40k GT last year, I seem to remember he had Abaddon and it was 2.
Gave you 2 more than Dante.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, he gave command points in similar fashion. He's very much like the same guy, but with a dramatically improved profile.
Yeah,
and I don't think
it was 2 command points
me,
before.
But is he basically the same cost?
He's 240 before this.
He's 240 in the current Chaos Space Marine Codex. He's 240 right now also.
So basically, he just got turned from 240 with cool buffs to 240 and he'll Titan in the BA. I'm not sure what a BA is now in that context, but that's what he does.
I'm not sure if you're going to get bleeped for that or not. I mean, that's
I'm leaving it in. I think that's good enough.
I don't know. It was an entertaining faux pas, right?
So
I'm a little concerned.
The Lord Discordant, that's the guy that's on the cool model we're just talking about. That thing is awesome. He buffs demon engines, and he gets some benefits for killing vehicles. When he kills a vehicle, he can it's a spirit thief is what the name of it is. Each time this model destroys an enemy vehicle, until the unit in the fight phase, this model can either repair a demon engine or release a beam of energy. Yeah, kind of neat. So he can repair a demon engine that's within 3 inches of him, as long as it doesn't have fly, or he can shoot this beam. So you pick an enemy vehicle within 12 inches of this model, roll a d6 on a 2+, the vehicle suffers d3 mortal wounds.
So he basically converts the machine spirit of a vehicle into either healing another vehicle or blowing something up.
Yeah, it's a little situational. I don't know how awesome that's going to be in practice, but when it works, like when you kill a rhino and you get to shoot a sentinel or something, or a dreadnought.
Or just, like a unit. Free smite's free smite.
That's fair. That's fair, but it's only against vehicles.
I mean, I like smiting vehicles.
It works on dreadnoughts, knights. I mean, mortal wounds are still mortal wounds. He also, that guy, the Lord Destroyer, he has 12 wounds. This is one of those to where, like, if he didn't have 12 wounds, he'd probably be included a lot more often.
Yeah, it's a funny thing where 9 wounds is better than 12 on many models.
Yeah, but he does have a 5+ invulnerable save and a 2+ armor save, so it's not like he's, a limp noodle. He's got 12 wounds, like we just said, 2+ save, 5+ invulnerable save, and he regains a wound. At the beginning of your turn, this model regains 1 lost wound.
I'm pretty sure the limp noodle is attached to the shrimp he's riding.
He's basically a Warbsmith strapped to a, what's the stabby clawy? Yeah, it's like a Mauler Fiend ridden by a Warbsmith in every way.
Brand new character in this book called the Master of Executions.
Sounds charming.
He's a warp-sided butcher. After the enemy has completed all their charge moves, this model can perform a heroic intervention if it's within 3 inches of an enemy model or within 6 inches of an enemy character. So he's good at scooting up there and trying to kill some characters. And he's got that Death Skulls rule where you can re-roll 1 hit roll, wound roll, or damage roll if you're targeting a character.
I hear he puts on great cocktail parties too.
I bet he does. The Axe of Dismemberment is ×2 strength, making him strength 8, does D3 damage. Each time you make a wound roll of a 6 for this weapon, the target suffers 1 mortal wound in addition to any other damage.
I feel like that brought his cool factor down a lot, by the way, in the sense that you can imagine him, he's sitting there and he's gifted this amazing axe by the Chaos Gods. And his buddy goes, his buddy, the chaplain or Dark Apostle goes, what are you going to name that axe? And he goes, well, I use it to dismember things, so I suspect I'll call it the Axe of Dismembering.
But maybe he's thinking of dismember or that member. I don't know.
It could be that member.
If it was an axe that didn't dismember, though, I mean, it would be false advertising or just a really bad axe.
Right. So maybe you should just call it the Tautologax because it's basically the axe of being an axe.
He has 5 attacks. Not to jump into this.
Did you say 5 attacks? Axe? 5, 8. How do you spell that?
That's right. But with Death to the False
Emperor. You're
Emperor.
edging into my territory here.
He said Death to the False Emperor. That could add up, and then you trigger more 6s.
What's important is he has an axe, guys. Just FYI.
It is not a small axe either. It is a giant axe.
It's pretty big. He's not a hatchet, you might say.
It looks like he might have a couple of different head options. I can't tell if that's just the way it's painted, but it looks like he might have a head that looks like has a very form-fitted leather mask or an unhelmeted head.
I feel like Games Workshop has been giving a lot of different modeling options with this particular Chaos release.
That's cool, man. Variants of the models is going to be awesome. So the Dark Apostle is next. There's a big change to the Dark Apostle. He gets battle hymns, he gets prayers, and there's some dark disciples. You've seen this in the picture. The couple of alkalites, the dark disciples that buff that up. Essentially, you add 1 to the die rolls for a prayer chanted by the Dark Apostle. And the Dark Apostle has 6 prayers. Some of them are better than others. I'm going to go ahead and list a couple that I happen to like. Mm-hmm. One is the Benediction of Darkness. So you have to, you pick a prayer like a psychic power at the beginning of the game or when you generate your army list. And then on a 3+, you're able to, the prayer is heard and you commune with your dark gods and then the effect happens. So Benediction of Darkness, if this prayer is heard, pick 1 friendly Legion unit within 6 inches of this priest. Subtract 1 from hit rolls made for attacks with ranged weapons that target that unit.
All right. When do you make the roll?
This is, it knows the Dark Zealotry prayer and 1 prayer from the prayers to the Dark Gods opposite. At the start of each battle round, you can pick 1 of the prayers this model knows. And he knows the Dark Zealotry. He gets the Dark Zealotry and then 1 of the prayers to the Dark Gods.
So hold up. What does Benediction of Darkness do again?
Minus 1 to hit for a unit within 6.
You target a unit
from shooting
powerful.
attacks.
Yeah,
pretty good right there.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some obliterators. I know people have been giving them a lot of grief. What we're going to talk about again. I think they happen to be awesome, and there's something in here that makes them even more awesome. When you stack this on it, this gets better. I don't know that this is in and of itself a reason to take the Dark Apostle, but if you're already planning on going second or trying to go second, I think this is pretty cool because at the start...
We're talking about Slaneshi Alpha Legion obliterators, right, at this point?
we might be. All right. The next thing is the Omen of Potency. If this prayer is heard, Add 3 to the priest attacks characteristic. In addition, if the prayer is heard, that priest melee weapons have an armor penetration characteristic of -4.
So that guy goes to, what is he, like a 7 attack priest at that point?
He would go to 6 attacks.
Oof. Okay.
CP -4. What's the damage on that weapon he's got? It's just damage 1, right?
Damage 2. Your cursed crow
damage 2.
Damage 2.
So he basically turns into supercharged plasma gun in many ways.
Strength 5, it would be neg 4 AP, 2 damage.
Does he have any more aura buff for helping out his pals type prayers?
Not with that prayer.
No, well, he has
not that prayer.
friendly Legion units within 6 of this model in the morale phase can use this model's leadership as their own, instead of their own, but then he gets the Dark Zealotry prayer. The prayer is heard, you can reroll hit rolls in the fight phase for attacks made by friendly Legion units that are within 6 inches of this priest.
Priest is sounding pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, it's definitely a good addition. We talked about this during the playtest process, but Dark Apostles and Chaplains and things like that have always been kind of worthless units. And so the fact that at least one of them, the Dark Apostle, has changed from worthless into they have these super cool prayers is pretty neat. I like to imagine Chaos on its knees. I'm not exactly a fan of the bad guys. So I like the idea that he just kind of like gives up, falls to his knees, and starts praying to his gods in the middle of the combat.
But then he's coming
like I've done my job.
Neg 4.
Yeah, just gonna pretend he's gonna always fail his prayers. Because you can fail your prayers, right?
Word bearers always needed a crutch.
Though. Yeah, you do. You actually, you can fail. It's a 3+. And then the Dark Disciples can give you a +1, and I think there may be another way to get a +1 in here outside of that. So there's the Dark Zealotry, which every Dark Apostle comes with. Then there's the prayers to the Dark Gods, and then there are specific prayers for each of the named gods. Mm. So you get some options there.
And he gets access to one of them a game?
What's that?
You can only choose from one of those like per game, like he's got to pick it before the game starts?
Yeah. And one prayer from the Dark Gods opposite. Yeah. So you got to be,
I think there's some... It knows 2 prayers, right?
He does know 2 total. The Dark Zealotry, and then you get to pick another one. And I think you're going to find ones that work with your list. I don't know that this is going to be like it's going to be the tool that you plant in your list specifically because it does some combo or trick or whatever.
I think Paul's right. I think you're gonna bait the Apostolin based upon a prayer. You sort of like buy him as a tax to up the potency of either a unit or units or him or whatever your particular.
Yeah, it's a good point. He's 100 points. Is. So it is kind of a price tag, but he is a 4-wound character with an invulnerable save, a 4+ invulnerable save.
What it was. So it's weird. This is a weird one for me. I've got in front of me my original playtesting files, but I don't have the final, so I don't know what the changes were that we were. What are the? Let's help some folks out. What do the god specific powers do?
So Khorne, Wrathful, Entreaty, Khorne Priest only. If this prayer is heard, add 2 to the priest strength characteristics.
That's interesting. Why would you take that over the extra 3 attacks? Right?
I don't know. I think that the ones I named, I think are the ones that I would probably almost always pick. But there are some things in here that like give you 1 to the hit rolls. I think you add 1 to the wound rolls made for melee. And then you can give a Legion unit, you can give somebody a 5+ invulnerable save. So I can see, you can give a unit a 5+ invulnerable save. So I feel like there's some play there.
That definitely.
And I'm sorry.
Would that work for cultists too?
Hang on. It will. I'll tell you why in a second. If the prayer is heard, friendly Legion models have a 5+ invulnerable save while they're within 6 inches of the priest. So it's not a unit. It's all models.
All models within 6
inches.
That makes me grateful for Eliminators, let me put it that way, and Vindicare Assassins.
So cultists still have the Legion trait, the keyword, but they don't get the benefits from the Legion. But I think this would still count. They would be Legion dudes.
Yeah,
I love it when cultists are more durable than Space Marines. Mutating
Invocation, that's the Zinch. If this prayer is heard, the priest regains D3 lost wounds. All the rest of this stuff goes away at the end of the battle round. It goes to the designers go on to note here that these wounds don't go away at the end of the battle round. The Feculent Beseechment is the Nurgle thing that gives you 2 to your priest toughness. And then the Blissful Devotion is Slanesh. If this prayer is heard, the priest can advance and charge in their battle round.
That's an interesting one. You feel like that one might be situationally, like you'll take it as a trump card.
Yeah, doesn't give any of his pals the ability to advance and charge.
Well, okay, so
nobody's actually pals with a priest. Okay,
this maybe we're talking about. I don't know. Maybe
particularly a word bearer.
It does say at the start of each battle round, and so if you pray and get the Blissful Devotion, can you do that in your opponent's turn and then advance and charge? Oh, no, sorry, in their turn in this battle round. So that's specifically in their turn. Never mind.
Learn to read, Paul.
Yeah. Look, a lot to process. A lot of chaos goodness here.
This is what happens when your brain's on heresy. Don't do heresy, kids.
Sorry, the T6 thing where he buffs his own toughness, that helps with Vindicators, because that makes it, oh no, it doesn't. Never mind.
It does not at all.
Nope.
The Vindicator goes, cool, I shot you in the head.
Yeah, you're still dead.
No toughness in their brain.
Especially not some guy on his knees praying to the gods in the middle of a battle.
Yeah, that's a sign of a weak brain.
The leather.
I've heard one praying to chaos.
New Chaos Space Marine models.
Yeah, never mind.
Some of their poses are amazing. Especially
the models are gorgeous.
The guy in the Rambo pose, with the belt feed coming over his hand.
I have a hunch, though, that people are going to be like WTF playtesters when they talk about the Chaos Space Marine data sheet. And I don't know how to correctly tell them, I'm sorry, I'm not sorry.
Well, look, Chaos Space Marines are what they are. I don't see people taking power armor bodies outside of a few exceptions. We'll actually get to those. New Terminators. Now, people have been getting a lot of grief, been given a lot of grief about the Terminators because they don't look different enough from their old models. Who cares? They're plastic. They're awesome. They do look like that maybe someone overinflated a current Chaos Space Marine model.
Are they jacked up? Are they a bit bigger?
They're bigger, yeah. At least they look bigger to me. I haven't seen the models firsthand. But I think they look awesome. The old ones look good. They were just a little bit dated in the kit composition.
I'd be really curious to see how they scale against, like, how a Terminator scales against Primaris. Because they've upped the scale on the Chaos Space Marine kit a little bit. They're still smaller than Primaris. But I'm curious to know if these Terminators will actually look beefy enough next to the Super Marines.
I think the problem...
Terminators to feel like Terminators.
I think the problem, honestly, is just simply that the kits, as gorgeous as they are painted in Black Legion colors, which are basically boring. And so it was difficult for them to really show the diversity and gorgeousness of the kits with that type of build.
I think the kits are just fine. And I liked them before. I've been a fan of the Chaos Terminators even back when they were the old second edition medals.
Agreed.
And this is carried forward that style and aesthetic.
I guess my point is black and gold is boring.
Yeah, fair enough.
Models are awesome.
I had an idea for a Black Legion color scheme that involved, like, it would be black, but it would have kind of like, when you're walking around after a rainstorm in a parking lot? Well, it's just that oil slick look on the black. You know what I mean? Where all the oils kind of come in, it's all swirling. So I feel like that would be a really cool.
The Havocs are where it's at right now. I told you that you might not be wanting to take power armor models, but the Havocs now, for one additional point, they're 1 point more, I think, than they are right now in the Codex. You're going to get T5, toughness 5, and you don't suffer a penalty when you move and fire your heavy weapons.
That one little rule matters more than the T5 by a lot.
Well, but I'm saying it, but you get both of those for 1 additional point per model.
Yep.
Does it have rules for the rotor cannon thing?
It's got to be in the heavy weapon stuff, right? You would imagine.
What does that do?
Let's check it out. I'm in the Forbidden Armory.
It's called the Reaper Chain Cannon.
The Reaper Chain Cannon is heavy 8, strength 5, neg 1 AP, 1 damage, 24-inch range.
It's 2 2/3 heavy bolters.
What's like an assault cannon with 2 extra dice and 2 extra strength?
No, -1 strength. What's it cost?
Reaper Chain Cannon? Good question.
It's right there, the profile.
No, nothing.
8 shots, not 8 strength.
The Reaper Chain Cannon is 20 points. 24-inch range?
Seems about right.
I don't know.
Was it 16 for 2 heavy bolters? This is 2 heavy bolters plus 2. It seems technically. So 3 heavy bolters would cost 24 and be 9 shots. This is 1 less, but 4-point discount. So it's technically cheaper than 3 heavy bolters.
Well, I'm more thinking about it to what role does it play for that 20 points?
Yeah, I kind of wondered the same. It's an anti-infantry weapon in an army that does fine at killing infantry, but
The 8 shots at 24-inch range is, well, okay, let me actually say, it's not 24-inch range. It's really 30-inch range.
Because you can move and shoot.
Yeah, with no penalty. So
can it be taken in a like a regular Chaos Space Marine squad? Because that might be useful.
You put me through the paces.
I just think it looks cool. I'm just hoping someone can use it. 1 Chaos Space Marine may replace his bolt pistol with a plasma pistol or replace his bolt gun with 1 item from the special weapon or heavy weapons list. Well, we hope that's on there.
So let's go to the heavy weapons list. I'm going to have to find the heavy weapons list. Step 1. Find the heavy weapons list. I'm going to say yes, Val.
I'm going to assume yes.
But some of those things aren't on the heavy weapons list, but I think that's going to be the same thing with the Havocs as they get to switch out for something on the heavy weapons list.
So there you go, like 4 dudes in one of those things?
Yep. A Havoc may replace their heavy bolter or last cannon with a weapon from the heavy weapons list. So yep, has to be on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The next thing, the Binocular Crown. That's the terrain piece. I'm pretty sure if you adjust those sigils just right, it says something about drinking more Ovaltine. It's a malevolent locust. Psychers attempting to manifest their powers within 24 inches of the model will suffer a Perils of the Warp on any double rolls. Chaos Psychers are not affected.
Within 24
inches, yeah.
That's harsh.
Yeah.
I can see that screwing some Eldar folks over.
Chaos units have a 5+ invulnerable save while they're wholly within 6 inches of the model.
Another 5 up invuln. That's good.
So yeah, I guess you can that's actually a good thing that you can pass those around. At the start of the second and third battle rounds, the range for both these auras abilities is increased by 3 inches.
Like each and every battle round?
Okay. The Loathsome Aura. Chaos units have a 5+ invulnerable save while they are wholly within 6 inches of this model. In addition, you can reroll Psychic Test for Chaos Psychers while they're within 6 inches of this model. At the start of the second and third battle rounds, the range of both of these auras is increased by 3 inches, i.e. it's 9 inches in the second round and 12 inches in the third and subsequent battle rounds.
Wait. What?
It starts out as a 6-inch aura to give people wholly within a 5+ invulnerable save and let Chaos Psychers re-roll their Psychic Test. And then on the turn 2, that goes up to a 9-inch aura, and then in turn 3, and for the rest of the game, it's a 12-inch aura for those two benefits.
Is it a piece of terrain, or is it
a mobile piece of terrain?
It's a targetable. It's a fortification. But what that means is if you look at the piece, it's clearly like 3 or 4 inches across. So it's like a close to 30-inch diameter area of the battlefield that gives you a 5 of invul plus the Psyker buff.
Yeah, it has some
starting on turn 3.
It has some lashing warp energies. It's a pistol weapon, a 6-inch pistol weapon. So if anyone does get close enough or assaults it, then it has some means of defending itself.
What's its defense? What's its
a pistol D6. It's not good.
No, I mean like the actual.
Well, it's a D6 shot autocannon with 6 inches.
Yeah, it is. It is.
No, and AP2. It's like a better autocannon.
Yep, did damage too. It's toughness 8 with 14 wounds and a 3+ save.
On average, it's 2 autocannons at 6-inch range with AP2 instead of 1.
Yep, and it's a chaos thing, so it obviously has its own 5+ invulnerable save.
How dare it?
How many points is this? I think that's probably the next question.
1,000.
It is 100 points.
I was mistaken.
So for the price of a Dark Apostle, you could get yourself an invulnerable save on a stick. I don't mind it.
In my head, I'm just thinking that's going to blow up real good. If it was like a Nurgle tree, then I'd be sweating a bit.
Oh, because it's otherwise invulnerable?
Because you can't kill it, yeah.
But okay, but it is T8 with 14 wounds and a 5+ invulnerable save. Like, why is somebody going to be shooting at that?
Because
it's like a Leviathan Dreadnought that can't move.
No, let's be fair. The only reason you ever bother shooting at like a knight at T8 and many wounds is because it's shooting you back in the face.
Yeah.
It's going to feel real bad to have to point guns at a T8 14 wound thing that's only 100 points instead of at the things in the army that are directly affecting you. So it's probably a pretty reasonable buy if your army works around it. Like if your army doesn't, then you don't want it. But if its abilities and functionality work with the army, you'd be happy to have this thing.
I think it's one of those things you can design a list around several of the new chaos pieces.
Yes.
Which is interesting. So the formations are in here. The specialist detachments. It's all chaos all the time.
May I ask one question?
Yes.
Is the Khorne Blood Altar thing in there?
It is. Yeah. There's a section on the demons. The demons have their own section, and they give out some abilities on that. So hang on, let me find that.
There's been a lot of people trying to read the blurry photos of this all week. So.
The Skull Taker, the Blood Master, and then the Skull Altar are in here. So the Skull Altar is a single model with no stats. This thing, I guess, is by all accounts invulnerable.
It's the Nurgle tree. Yeah.
Immune. All right. A monument to slaughter. After it's set up, Skull Altar is treated as a terrain feature. It cannot move for any reason. Is not treated as a friendly or enemy model and cannot be targeted.
What is its battlefield role?
Fortification. If a Skull Altar is summoned using a demonic ritual, set up anywhere between or touching the base of a Khorne demon infantry character. The Nexus of Dark Glory, a model's locus of rage ability, same one from the Chaos Demon Codex, has a range of 12 inches instead of 6, while they are within 8 inches of any Skull Altars.
Okay.
Has the Witchbane rule, subtract 1 from Psychic Test, taken for Psychers within 8 inches of the model. I'd rather that been like a multiple of 8.
Yeah, that was the one I was wondering 16.
About. Conduit to Khorne's domain. You can re-roll any of the dice rolled when you make a summoning roll for chaos for a Chaos character within 8 inches of this. And then Champion of Murder. If a Khorne Demon Infantry character base is on the Skullwalker's platform, and it goes on to tell you how to do that, improve the character's invulnerable save by 1 to a maximum of 3+. In addition, while a Khorne Demon unit is wholly within 16 inches of any occupied Skull Altars, add 1 to the attack characteristics of all models in that unit.
Well, that's pretty nifty.
Yeah, you have a character on there sitting on there, and I guess he's channeling the rage energies out. I mean, that's a lot of attacks from Bloodletters.
Mm-hmm.
And you can
deep strike that.
Yeah.
You could probably, if you can deep strike a tree, you can deep strike that thing.
Yeah, you can. You summon it.
That seems inconvenient.
It's a Chaos Khorne Demon, or its faction keywords.
Yeah, so you can use the strat to bring it in.
Okay, now I want to talk about those formations just a little bit, the specialist attachments. So some of them are up on the community page, and there's a bunch in here. I'd like to talk about the Devastation Battery. For 1 CP, Chaos Lords, Warpsmiths, Havocs, and Obliterators in this attachment can get the Devastation Battery keyword. There is a 1-point stratagem that says, use this stratagem at the end of your opponent's first movement phase. If you did not have the first turn, pick a Devastation Battery unit from your army. That unit can shoot as if it were your shooting phase.
Seems good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can see that being okay. I mean,
especially that safely deployed Alpha Legion Obliterator unit, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is the reason this is so bonkers crazy, if you ask me, I mean, in a good way, is that it's at the end of the enemy's movement phase. It's not at the end of the turn. It's not conditional upon somebody deep striking or whatever. It's at the end of the enemy's movement phase. If you didn't go first, fire away for 1 additional command point.
I mean, I think it would be mostly useless without that, honestly. But it does kind of depend on enemy units coming up to engage. And you still are going to need stuff like, line of sight. Whatever.
It only matters about coming up to engage if you have short range weapons.
Well, and they do have that Warlord trait that you also get potential, if you need it, to reroll 1s to wound.
Yeah, the Warlord trait is Armor Bane. Reroll 1 rolls of 1 for attacks made by friendly Devastation Battery units that are within 6 inches of your Warlord if the target is a vehicle. Knights are vehicles, by the way.
Man, I had no idea.
I think it's good. I think that's a good thing. There's a lot of thought that goes into people trying to build armies to go second. This is just another thing that you can take.
I think it is probably, in the context of like an ITC mission, it seems like a good way to screen out somebody from getting like a potential turn 1 recon point in one area. It's like, okay, you move up so you can get this point, but I'm going to shoot you and you're going to be gone.
So that's the major points that I wanted to cover from the Vigilus Ablaze stuff. That is just barely scratching the surface of everything that's in this book. The book has lore. It's a thick book. It's probably as thick as the expanded Chaos Space Marine Codex. So it's going to be well worth picking up.
Yep. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, this is one of those things to where if you're a Chaos player, you're definitely going to want it. If you're a junkie of the lore, you definitely want it. You want it, and if you just want to know what you're going to be facing, you want. There's a Fallen thing in here. There's what is it? 6-8 specialist detachments.
And I just want to say that before the original Vigilus book, every time someone brought up a shock attack gun, I laughed at them. And then there was a little detachment that gave a little fancy relic, and now shock attack guns are in like every single orc army out there because of one relic from one Vigilus thing. So everyone who's upset about, what maybe they've been reading on the Warhammer community about the Chaos Space Marines 2.0, I think wait till you see the full picture of what Vigilus adds to the army and the faction.
So there's Black Legion rules in here, and then there's some expanded rules for the Renegade chapter. So the Renegade chapters get some specific stratagems, which are also, I believe, in this. So I don't know if those are in the Chaos Space Marine Codex, but
well, I think the thing that I like about those is they offer some ways to get additional command points or get command points back during the game. Just from what I've seen on the community page for that, I think that where command points are kind of the currency of victory in many instances, having certain ways to maximize either your beginning command points or getting command points back during the game. Now there's, as Nova last year demonstrated, right, there was a problem with abusing the amount of command points that you could get back, where you could end a game with more than you started with. That's not a problem anymore, but still getting command points back or getting more command points is just the flexibility that it offers.
It's powerful. Let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about a concept of player potential. You're essentially what could be your ceiling for player potential and your floor, and then how to operate somewhere in the middle of there and to recognize when you're kind of trending towards the floor. We'll talk more about that after the break.
We're sponsored by Terminators. With their sturdy, lightweight and portable tables, you can make war anywhere. Please visit them at www.fermaterra.com.
Hey everybody, we are back, and we're basically in full-on tournament season swing.
Oh, it's on.
Yeah, ITC points, people are wanting to get those. Large events happening all over the world. Next week will be the Adepticon mega event.
You gonna be there?
Oh man, absolutely gonna be there. Gonna be swinging for the fences in the team tournament.
Oh, we're gonna take you down to Chinatown in the team tournament.
You're not.
I mean, you could say that.
Although I've been seeing the models, and they're pretty good. You're in competition.
Yeah. Pete was, because Pete Foley is on our team. Okay?
Turns out he's not a bad painter, though.
No, he's a beautiful painter. He's also a former heavy metal studio painter.
I did not know he had that type of painting potential. It's been cool to follow him on Twitter.
Yeah, we are playing Gene Stealer cults, but they're not called that. They're called the Gin Distiller cult, because Pete and I are both big G&T fans. So we'll have gin drinks that we're making tableside for our opponents that are food colored to theme to match the orange, purple, and blue of the Gene Stealer army.
I will certainly be visiting your tables even if we don't play.
I expect you to. I'll give you a big hug.
I really feel like the top prize at the team tournament should just be a really nice sash, crown, tiara, and a tearful speech in front of a waving audience. It is a hilarious pageant to me. I love listening to everyone getting their teams ready and all their costumes. It's kind of funny. All the other tournaments are all super serious about lists and what's going to break the meta. And this one is just like, what's your display board like?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank the academies and the Vals and maybe the Murphys.
on your path to victory. Look, if we play each other, you're not getting through us. I guess it depends on which match. We have,
I ain't trying to go through you. I'm just going to sit on objectives and watch you lose. But that's another story for another day.
We shall see. I feel really confident in the team and the army itself. But more, I also feel very, like Val was talking about, I feel very confident in the display. I feel very confident in the way the army looks. I think it's going to have a nice contrast that even if people don't like the individual models, they'll still walk by and go, man, now let me take a look at that. It's all the finishing moves in practice. So, I really do practice what I preach and put that extra little bit of time into the models. And once I put everything on display and I take pictures and you see it, you're going to be like, man, okay, I was skeptical before about the finishing move stuff, but you'll see it work. And I can't wait to show people.
Using your power, Paul, to influence the judges with your podcast reach, this is just, I don't know. I thought Warhammer pageantry was above this.
No, I already messaged the Adepticon tournament TOs and told them not to give extra points to Paul.
Look, there's no player's choice vote, or I'd be seriously politicking.
There is, though, the Team Spirit Award, which is the
award. That's right. Yeah, we're not competing on.
But the Tiki guys have won that every year.
Oh, because they're amazing.
Also Beast Coast. Just saying.
There you go. There's going to be plenty of trash talking that happens in between now and the tournament. At the tournament, that's like 55% of Warhammer. But I'm just, I want people to come by and say, hey, say what's up, but answer your question. Yeah, I'm going to be there. That was the answer.
So, segue complete.
I want to talk about, this is like hard-grained player potential and how people can recognize, what their own potential is, and then what their floors, what is the worst that they think that they can do at a tournament, and then what's the best they can reasonably think they can do at a tournament. You walk into a tournament, you always go, I'm going to go 8-0, but is my ceiling really 5-0? Is it 8-0? Can I win 5+ games in a row in a competition setting with all the trappings of going to a tournament? I've traveled. I've got to deal with fatigue. I've got to deal with not having my normal breakfast routine. I've got to, there's all those things that contribute into what your realistic ceiling for performance is.
I got all the feels about the subject. This is an interesting one. I can't wait.
Well, and then the other side is, what is your floor? What is the worst you're going to do? Are you typically on average? Do you think you can win 3 games out of the 5? Do you think you're only going to win 2 games out of the 5? And this is not about, I don't want to make this into something of where people are trying to operate outside of what a comfort zone is or what they actually want to accomplish at a tournament. Sometimes you just want to go and hang out, and playing games is secondary, tertiary, or even lower in the priorities. But this is about actually winning games, and then what do you think your potential is? So now that I've framed it, open it up for discussion.
It's interesting. I will get deep into this, I expect. But so I've played in dozens of GTs and team tournaments over the last more than a decade, 12 years or so I won't call myself a regular, but I've played in a bunch of different tournaments. I say I played for a dozen years in the tournament scene. And the worst I've done in a tournament is, I think, 6-2. I think that was my lowest or weakest performance of a weekend. And I got the second loss on the top table, like this game is for the whole tournament. And I've never entered a tournament thinking I would do any better than 3-3. But genuinely no BS. Never went into a tournament thinking in any way whatsoever that I would ever do better than 50-50. And I was sure going into every tournament I've ever been in that I would lose every game when I went into that game. I'd go into the first round and I'd be playing against some stranger who'd rarely played in tournaments and they had a weird list. And I'd think of all the ways that list could beat me if my opponent did XYZ. I share it in this fashion because I think the reason that I've rarely lost many games in a tournament, and I would say there's 2 tournaments I've lost 2 games in, there's maybe 5 I've lost 1 game in, and the rest I've not lost any in. And the reason for that in part is because I've gone into every single game I've ever played thinking I'm going to lose this game, and here's how I'd beat me. The moment I see the list I'm going up against. I've never gone into a game thinking I should win this game, this is a no-name. I'm a good player, or I should win this game, my army's a net list, or I've never ever thought I'm going to win this game going into any game I've ever played in a tournament ever. To the point that I've had teammates from Beast Coast, et cetera, telling me I'm a sandbagger or whatever, that I just say that to, CYA.
Trying to work at that sportsmanship vote.
Yeah, or something like that. But I think when you talk about floors, some of the floor comes from a stance and a position and an outlook on the game that is oriented toward instantly problem solving, not an assumption that I'll win or how will I win, but how are the many ways I could lose, and immediately solving for X for all of those things. So that no matter what happens, you sure aren't going to just lose. You might not win, but the first thing you do is find every way and think through every way you might not get out of that game with a W. And only then start to think, how am I going to get the W myself? And it's just a personal philosophy, but I feel like most players, by far, maybe 99% of players, don't do that. The bad players go in thinking any sorts of different things inconsistently, and the good players go in thinking, I'm going to win. I'm a great player, so I'll win. And I think that's the root of where a player's floor ends up being fallible. And with probably too much self-promotion, that's where I'll start to come.
Well, I'd like to cut in here.
Yeah, go ahead.
And just talk about a little bit how a player's personal ethos is going to affect their win ratio. I think that it's something that we can be honest with each other about, that there are certain compromises that you have to decide whether or what you're comfortable with doing, and it goes at every level of the game, right? It can start at list building and go all the way to when you're rolling dice on the table. Now, for myself, there are certain things that I value more than a win, right? I like to play with a pure faction list, and I understand that there are certain limitations that come with that. Now, for me, that is going to impact my ceiling depending on how good the faction is and in the overall power level of different books can be. My faction in particular, for most of the last 2 decades being Blood Angels, that's been up and down. But there is something about, if I expect to go to a 6 or a 9 round tournament with a pure Blood Angels list and go undefeated, I might be setting the bar a little bit too high if I'm thinking realistically. That doesn't mean that in each game I'm playing that I'm not engaged in accomplishing mission objectives. And I don't want to make it sound like the list is going to be, or the faction is going to be the primary determinant of whether you win or lose. But you need to be honest with yourself about what you want to achieve, what do you get most out of the games that you're playing, and be realistic about the limitations that you set for yourself by sticking to your particular ethos.
Well, and I'm not talking about necessarily being resigned to either one of these ends of the spectrum. But what you're talking about is something that we've talked about before with like win ratios and ratios of armies that you'll see at tournaments, and then you can just be kind of realistic about what to expect. Like, my army doesn't match up well against Tyranids. So if Tyranids are really popular, that means I'm probably going to have to play 2 or 3 Tyranids over the course of the weekend. So I'm probably going to, I may get lucky and win one of those games, and I'm going to bottom out in the other game. So I'm 1 game down. So then automatically my ceiling is lowered by 1 game in my mind. Now I may overcome that, but that's what that could be how I set my expectation level of going into that particular tournament.
I think both what Chris and Mike are referring to is exactly that. I think Mike's philosophy is nothing more than setting expectations. And if you set them super low, you're less likely to, encounter disappointment, which is going to cloud all sorts of judgment. So like having that approach, you're starting from a place that's it may or may not be realistic given your player skill and all that kind of stuff, but nonetheless it puts you in a position where you're not easily setting yourself up for a fall and not thinking strategically or making assumptions. You are able to think clearly through it, and that, that way you're not at the mercy of a surprise or what have you.
To jump off of that too, like, and going off of what Paul said, when I was going into Adepticon last year, I figured that if I rolled up against an Eldar list, the Eldar Shining Spear, Dark Reaper combo list, that because of how well that had been doing, and I had just judged LVO that year, not like 6 weeks before that, I had watched the final game where it was mirror matched Elder list. I knew what they could do, right? My game 2 at Adepticon, I went up against one of those lists, and I ended up winning that game. So sometimes you are going to exceed your own expectations for certain things like that. And the key to that on the table is staying engaged and not acting as if you've already lost.
I'll piggyback. So I brought a 32 unit army to the London GT last year. And I got quite lucky and I won that GT, but it wasn't easy. My opponents were all ETC captains. It's hard for me to say they did that on purpose to me, but it seemed like random pairing, and somehow
when that random pairing doesn't seem so random, it's hard not to feel it.
Every one of those games, I should have lost. And my opponent said so too. It's really funny. There's a guy named Simon Lean who's a well-known British player, and he likes to troll me. So every game, he found a way to drop on my table and go, "Man, you're going to lose this one, huh?" And my answer was generally, "I guess so." The prototypical example, or the perfect example, was my second round. I was up against James Ramsey, who is one of the nicest guys I've ever known and ever met and ever interacted with in the hobby. And he's a phenomenal player. I mean, he's consistently one of the best players in Europe. And James had the Nurgle army at the time, which was the 3 plague drone units and, a bunch of like 3 or 4 plague bearer units and some characters. And that's it. And I had like 32 kill point guard and Blood Angel and Custodes army. And it was the one mission that had no objective value other than Maelstrom. It was pure kill points. It was how many units did you kill? How many units did they kill? So that mission, in theory, I lose. And when we talked about it earlier, like the setting expectations, the philosophy is not to look at it and go, I should lose this game. The philosophy is instead to go, here's why I might lose this game. How do I solve for that? And so I won that game 20-0 and lost no units and nearly tabled his.
I don't even understand that. I don't understand that. But
exactly.
Yeah, but
that
the
is
approach
what to the game, most people, even very good players, go into that game and go, I'm going to lose on kill points. How do I win on Maelstrom? And I didn't do that. I went into the game and went, I should lose on kill points. How do I not? How do I solve for that? How do I solve for why I should lose? And it's a subtle difference, but it's not really expectation setting so much as instead of like your first step should be how am I going to lose? Then second step should be how do I not lose the way I should lose? And then the third step, and only the third step, should be how do I win? Because if you start by eliminating the way you might lose, you've taken away, in theory, your opponent's reason for winning. Because most of the time, your opponent's not sitting there going, like, for instance, in a kill point game where they have like 10 kill points and you have 30, how could I lose? They're going, well, I'm going to win on kill points. Let me do that. And so if you've stripped that away from them in the way you're going to approach the game, they probably haven't sat there thinking in a kill point game, how am I going to lose this? And so they're on the back foot, whether they know it or not, before a dice has been rolled.
And you think you're picking up an extra win because you're approaching it this way.
Well, I'm thinking I don't want to lose any games ever in a tournament ever. No matter what army I bring, no matter how unbalanced the matchups, I don't want to lose ever. So we talk about floor setting. I think floor setting is not about monofaction or not. It's not about assuming losses. It's not about accepting, you're on a down foot. It's about approaching the game from the perspective that by nature, the first thing you do is strip away and solve for every advantage your opponent has, while simultaneously 99% of your opponents are banking on the advantage they have. And in so doing, they're banking on the thing that is your first concern and the object of most of your thinking. And I don't know if this is too esoteric, to discuss, but hopefully the concrete example gives the example. And I didn't approach that game going, how do I kill his dangerous plague units? Because he's going to beat me on kill points, and at least I got to get rid of his stuff. It was, how do I make it so he kills nothing in this game? And it doesn't matter what I kill. If I kill something, I'm going to win. And so I approached the game not by trying to figure out a way to battle back from my assumed deficit. I approached it by deleting my opponent's advantage as my primary objective. Because the rest of the game figured itself out. Because whatever his advantage was, he probably didn't have all the advantages. And so the other advantages fell to me naturally, while his one advantage was the object of my dissection, as it were.
Yeah, I like that. But I more like it, the fact that you carry that anxiety with you to the beginning of the games. I do the same thing where I don't treat it, it doesn't necessarily matter who's standing on the other side of the table or what they've brought. I do bring that little anxiety of, man, if I don't really pay attention to what's happening, then I can lose this game no matter what. I have to figure out how to way to divorce myself from whatever die rolls happen or whatever my impression of the person across the table is. It's just got to still be focused on the game and my abilities and what the army can do.
Well, and that was visible when we played even our kill team game. I mean, you had a Meltagun army that landed 4 Meltagun hits and wounds on my guys on turn 1. And you killed nothing. And that game ended up a 1-point delta at the end. Now, I pulled it out, but the way you played it showed that your approach was not based on the expectation of what should happen. And maybe that's the ultimate thing of it is you should expect nothing. You should analyze, solve for all of your opponent's advantages first, and then play your game. And maybe that's the corollary.
But over
point.
time, yeah, but that factors into what I consider what's the likelihood I win X games over the course of a weekend. The way I approach the game and the way I play a game factors into that. And allows me to, I think, have that honest conversation with myself. Do I plan on winning 5 games? Of course I'm going to plan on winning 5 games, but I need to be honest with myself about what I can do that weekend. Like, for instance, if I'm having a rough week at work or a rough quarter, or I know that I couldn't get a squad painted and that particular tournament highly values the hobby side of it, factors into whatever the top prize that they consider the top prize. I need to know that what that is and then how to overcome it. So I don't walk away from that. Whatever the outcome is, I don't walk away from it. Let's say I'm operating near my floor. I'm finishing in the bottom 20 or whatever. I can walk away from that experience and say, what happened? What really happened? Not I rolled bad or my opponent's army was cheesy or whatever. I walk away really being able to diagnose what happens, and then it helps me become better for the next time.
I mean, that is well said. And I guess I might take it like an odd step further in that the way to approach a tournament is, so we're talking about floor right now, right? I mean, we're talking about you may get really unlucky and play nothing but hard counters. But if you have figured out the details of the game, and if you're approaching the game by solving for your opponent first instead of assuming outcomes, you're probably going to win most of your game. And that little nuance is the delta between assuming everything will go your opponent's way and playing your game with that expectation versus assuming, even if you have the upper hand, that your opponent will naturally do the thing that's natural instead of my opponent's going to be perfect and everything will go his way. How do I win anyway? But I've never gone in like assuming I'm a good player, so I'll win X number of games. I've always just kind of treated every game individually and applied the same philosophy to every single game. And so it's probably fair for me to stop talking for a moment.
Well, we've been coming at this with the touchy-feely type side of things where, it's about cosmic approach and that kind of stuff. But we actually have some real hardcore stats now. We're in an unprecedented time in 40k to where we have hard numbers to where we can look at actual win percentages of armies, win percentages of players, which I don't think we've had before.
We do and we don't. There's a guy named Chad Layton in the Beast Coast group. He plays Necrons. Necrons are god-awful, right? Like, nobody thinks Necrons are any good. Chad wins almost every game he plays, and he plays pure Necrons and nothing else. I posit that a player with the right philosophy, the right attitude, and the attention to detail will win 67% or more of their games, regardless of the army or faction they play.
I think that plays out actually when you look at one of the best statistical sets that we got is the last LVO. It was actually recorded in really extreme detail, and where you see that real separation is in the so players that came into the LVO ranked in the top 150, of which about half of all of those people actually showed up to the LVO. So you have a big sample of the best players in the world, and those guys actually won. And a Necrons player, by the way, won 5-1 might be the same guy. I don't know. Those players won 75% of all their games versus the field. So the other, 450 players. And when you take out their matches up against other top players, they won 80% of their games. Mm-hmm. So yeah, individual approach and player skill 100% is a massive factor in this game. But that being said, I mean, there's also some clearly defined trends in various matchups between factions and things like that. I don't think we're at the place where, if you have two players of equal player skill that, the matchup doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I guess we're talking about player floor right now, right? If assuming you're bringing a list that isn't just intentionally stupid, you probably can assume you'll win 2/3 of your game if you maximize how you play the game and if you approach it with the right philosophy. And that's the end of my rant and my argument as to what establishes your floor. I think your army list has almost nothing to do with your floor. Well, I think army list is what we talk about.
I don't think it has
ceiling.
Nothing to do with it. I think it does play into it, especially, like Val was just talking about how when we see two armies, two factions come against each other, one is disadvantaged. Is that what you were saying, Val?
Well, I'm just saying
or
that,
by the numbers.
There's two things that are very demonstrable when you look at actual recorded tournament stats from the biggest tournament that there is. And that's one, certain factions have advantages in various matchups against other factions. And the other one is that the guys coming to the tournament ranked highly did a lot better than the guys who didn't. the guys who weren't. And
I'm just saying it's one component to what that is. And so I guess what Mike, you were just saying that everyone fresh off the line is going to come in and be looking at a 67% win ratio.
No.
Which is fine. That's a fine thing that's a fine baseline.
Well, it's not. I think what I'm saying is if you give someone the Castellan armies, the right allies, et cetera, and they're a mediocre to crap 40k player,
they're going to lose.
And send them to LVO, they're probably going to go 50-50 at best in most situations. Like you run the samples 10 times, they're going to be 50-50, 9 out of 10. Despite the fact they have an army that will auto-win half of those games.
I have a buddy that will help hold that average down.
Maybe, yeah. So even lower. But if you send a guy who, if you give, say, Mike, you have to play Necrons at LVO, I'll bet you I go 4-2 or better every single time. No matter what Necron army I play. So I play the worst faction, I'll still go 4-2 or better every single game I play.
Sure.
Or every single time I run through the sample set. So can I win LVO so we're talking about ceiling, can I win LVO with Necrons? Never in a million years. But if you hand me a Castellan, of course I'll win, but that's not really the discussion, right? Give a good player the best list, of course he'll win. We're not talking to our audience saying, hey, all of you best players out there, I doubt they care about our opinion, right? But when we talk about the floor, I think your skill is more likely to get you to an average 67%-ish, 4-2 type finish than I'm bringing the really good lists. So of course my floor is higher. I actually think it's skill that will get you to the floor more than lists will.
So I was fortunate to take part in a conversation that was actually a similar topic to this, and Nick was along with us, and I asked him that question. I said, what percentage, goes to list versus player skill? And his answer actually, although it wasn't what I was looking for, I thought was pretty good. And he said that they're two separate puzzles and one doesn't work without the other. So it's kind of hard to separate one from the other. And I think your floor is, to me, what I was looking for from the answer was your floor is kind of dictated by list. I don't think you can go and compete with, my bro's Necrons list or some tactical Marines or whatever. I think your floor is really established in list design. But, once you're at a certain place, like most people can get to that 80% list. If you're taking the Castellan and instead of Smash Captains, you're bringing Shield Captains, whatever. I mean, 6 of one, half dozen the other. Once you have the efficient list, then that's where your ceiling is determined by your actual skill at the table. But I would say, honestly, if there's one thing that does establish a floor, it's probably list. And we take for granted, I think, probably the fact that we all probably craft lists that are a lot more crafty and we understand them better than, some players otherwise would. And that's because we consume a whole lot of content on this topic.
Maybe
spend a lot of time obsessing.
Maybe you're hitting a middle ground, right? Like where let's assume that you have to be the 80th percentile list for your faction is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
In that I'm not guaranteed to win LVO because I bring a Castellan list. But if I bring an intentionally dumb dumb list or a very bad list, obviously. It may be hard for me to... honestly, I still think I'd go for a 2 or better.
Well, let's just make an assumption, right? That within reason, people are building lists that are capable of accomplishing the objectives as outlined on the pre-published missions.
That's fair.
I think that, that will save us a lot of trouble in trying to narrow down the ceiling versus floor thing, is that we need to assume that people aren't bringing the list that big fish in a small pond, we only play Maelstrom at my store kind of thing at the LVO. So let's work off that assumption and kind of go from there.
I mean, that's a good assumption to have. I don't know if that's, I think an important thing to hear for people, and here I will repeat myself, is that a lot of people don't approach playing Mono Blood Angels the way that maybe you do, which is, attached to some form of reality about how well that thing can perform at the top end. Whereas I think, people will come expecting to be able to do well with whatever it is that they think is going to be a good thing. And that's, I think, where Brant's method to expectations is really quite healthy. In both those cases, you guys are realizing what your potential ceiling is. I mean, Brant's, ironically, is actually an imagined ceiling that is probably much lower than the reality. And that helps him to manage expectations in the game and stay focused on the things that actually matter and allow his skill to show. Yours is also one that's grounded in reality, and that, sometimes you're going to hit a matchup that you just can't possibly fight your way through. And sometimes you surprise yourself. But if you go in overconfident or expecting, to always roll the 4 up when you need to, you're going to get disappointed and you're going to be out of whack with reality. So all of this stuff
I always assume I'm going to fail the 4-ups. Like, I think it's pretty much a given.
Never made a 3-up. Never.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's all about, like, establishing healthy, good expectations. Like, I don't go into a tournament, expecting to win the thing. I go into the tournament, hopeful that I can keep my head on straight to win a game and then win another game. And then, and then I know personally my ceiling's probably in round 4 somewhere, as it panned out in the LVO and at various tournaments I participated in. But also, hell, man, I went to ETC and went 0-6. That was an awful experience, and that
But I don't think 0-6 is your actual ceiling. I think that's an outlier to. No, I'm sorry, your actual floor. I'm sorry, not your ceiling.
I mean, it doesn't matter if it is or it isn't.
I'm not sure. He could be maybe a 1-5 ceiling.
It was by far my worst, and I bring it up all the damn time. But the point is like, I didn't think that was going to happen.
But these are contributing points. These are things that it's not one avenue that actually is going to determine this equation of what your ceiling is. But we kind of went around. One of the points that contributed to this was, or even to this conversation, I got asked, like, can you give me some ideas about what would be a really powerful list? And then I gave some ideas about what would be a really powerful list. And they said, okay, cool, but I really want to do this, which was nothing that I suggested.
Yeah.
Which is fine. You don't have to take this. We play a game where there's so many things that factor into what we actually end up taking that day. But I think that person who's set out to be like, I want to make the most powerful list ever known to man. And then when you tell them what the most powerful list, or some components, not what the actual list is, some components to what the powerful list is, and then you still choose to go another way, then you are, you're injecting something into that formula of your floor versus ceiling.
Well, and I think that's true. I also think, like, how many Castellans were at the LVO? It was like 180 or some crazy number.
Was it 136 or something like that?
How many?
27% of all lists had them, I think. Is that right, Val?
Something like that.
I could get it for you, but I don't have that.
So 27%.
How many Castellans were in the top 8? So we know it's like 130 something, right?
Yeah.
3?
Yeah, 3 or 4. Yeah, I think it's 3.
You had, was it 3? So 3 out of 100. Yeah. 3 out of 130 top tier lists, right, made the finals. Now, if it was true that the list, and clearly anyone could argue and would be right, that the Castellan-based lists are the very best right now. They're better than the Yanari list. They're just the best lists right now. And with 130 of those people in the tournament, if it was truly the list that determined who was the top player, you would have had 6 or 7 or 8 of them in there, even just by the law of averages. I mean, I'm not quite that number. When that percentage of the field is that list, it would require an act of absurdity for only 2 or 3 of them to make the finals. And
if I'm remembering correctly, there were, I think, at least 3 or 4Castellan lists in the top 8.
I guess what the point is that, you know, a top list is not going to guarantee your floor. And it's certainly not going to guarantee you're going to like win a tournament. But if you look at the best players we know of who've been consistently good players for the past several years. And in fact, you already mentioned the facts. The top 75% of players won 75 to 80% of their games. And it didn't matter what their list was. And I mentioned there's one of the best players in Beast Coast, plays Necrons all the time, goes 5-1, 6-0, 4-2 all the time. I think your floor is about your understanding of the game, your philosophy approach, and your skill in playing, period. I think whether or not that floor has the chance to make it to the finals of a major event is definitely a list element. And whether or not you win the event consistently or at all is both. So it's an interesting question because my conclusion on it is that you can, other than being stupid about your lists, if you're bringing a GT list of some kind, skill is the number one factor to getting your floor up close to the finals, as it were.
Yeah, but these are all things that add into that, right? Go ahead, sir.
Sure. Well, once you're there, but I don't care if you have a mediocre Necron list. I think if you are a top tier player in your philosophy and skill, you will consistently be in the top third of the field playing even an average Necron list. But I think if you don't play that top tier list, that next step, you're unlikely to consistently make it to the top 8 of a field. And so maybe that's the in my opinion, the dual linkage is that your floor is definitely skill based, but your ceiling is intrinsically connected to a far more diverse set of variables.
That's it. I think that's a good point to wrap up on, is that these variables figure out what you are, what may be your weakest point. And there could be lots of things. But if you want to objectively get yourself in to raise that ceiling a bit, you've got to figure out what maybe your weakest element is and focus on that and how to get a little bit better. And then that's going to bring everything up.
Well said.
Well, guys, I really appreciate y'all taking the time with me. I know we briefly covered Vigilus Ablaze, and there will be more on that, especially as we start to build a list with the Chaos stuff. Chaos is fun to build lists for, so I'm really looking forward to doing that. And then we'll be talking about Adepticon. This is the show's 6th anniversary. Happy birthday show! I'm going to call it today. We'll say it's March 21st, but I think it was actually the 18th or something.
All right.
There's probably been a leap year in there somewhere, right?
And just shift it down closer. There we go. So happy birthday show. Thanks to everyone who's listened to us over the years and the people that have consistently been fans and downloads. And it means a whole lot. I don't say it enough. Thanks to everyone who gives us those 5-star reviews or whatever, the max star review. We're now in Spotify. So welcome to any Spotify listeners who have did not find us there before. That's actually Val prompted me to get into there.
Yeah, that was a listener request, and Paul was on it within like 5 minutes. It was amazing. One thing, we talked about some stats today. I think anyone out there who hasn't heard of it, I was referencing 40kstats.com. It's run by at this point, good internet friend of mine, Peter the Falcon Calissimo. And he updates all GT stats and data that he can get his grubby little hands on. So it's really fascinating stuff to look at. Check it out, 40kstats.com.
A few weeks ago, I mentioned some T-shirts that are going to be available. I will get those up in the web cart pretty soon for pre-order. I have been consumed with the aforementioned painting and everything, getting ready for Adepticon. I had to paint way more than I thought I was going to, so it kind of killed a few weeks there. And so every waking moment that wasn't doing other things, all the hobby stuff and was consumed by the painting. Thankfully, that's almost behind me. So some brand new T-shirts to be coming soon. Again, thanks a lot to everyone who's stuck with us over the years and the new fans. Every like, every share, every subscribe. You talking to somebody at the game store about how you heard something neat on the air from us helps immensely. Thanks a lot for everybody.
Happy birthday, Paul. And I gotta say, I am honored to be part of the show. I had a guy at the local Games Workshop who I'd never met before in my life walk out to me and say, "Are you Mike?" I said, "Yeah." And I assumed it would be a Nova Open question, but instead he said, "I just finished fat washing a bunch of my bourbons after listening to..." And I was obviously flattered, but also gracious beyond belief in my own mind about your willingness to have us on the show. So thank you for everything you've done with the community and for involving us.
Way to change people's lives, Mike.
Only thanks to Paul.
Well, more to come on all this stuff. We're going to continue to talk about all the cool things. We should talk about, more about some of the show and and do more listener stuff. But every comment on YouTube, every share, every thumbs up, every email we got. I've got a couple of emails that I haven't responded to that have come in to the FTM page. I promise I'm not ignoring it. I've been just absolutely swamped with this other stuff. It's all coming, but thanks for everybody for sending it in. Good night, everybody.
Cheers, man.
It's all in the reflexes.